Hi again, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the LVIII podcast. I'm your host, Stephen Negishi from the fan-sided beargoggleson.com. And with me today on a Sunday afternoon, wherever you are, we appreciate you joining us. With me, as always, is the Bears YouTuber with these The Windy City Productions, is Risihab Skiri, who just celebrated his birthday yesterday. Risihab, thanks for joining me once again, and congratulations on your birthday yesterday.
Thank you, man. Glad to be on. Glad to talk about some more Bears football.
Well, I appreciate it as always, and hopefully you had a wonderful birthday. And let's get to the Bears conversations this week. The Bears finally fill out their coaching staff this week. We know that Shane Waldron was hired a week and a half ago, but there were some coaching staff that were still open. And, the Bears managed to put together a very good offensive staff. A lot of the players, a lot of coaches who actually interviewed for the OC position with the Chicago Bears ended up taking the a job with the organization to work with Shane Waldron. And I'm going to try and pull up the Bears offensive coaching staff here in a moment. But Risihab, I'm sure you've done the video on the Bears coaching staff so far, and I want to know your take on what the Bears have put together so far from an offensive standpoint.
Yeah, it looks like a really decent staff so far. I mean, all the coaches that we hired, most of them were wanted elsewhere. I feel like they were having interviews elsewhere, especially getting Thomas Brown to be the passing game coordinator, I think is a very big hire for the Bears because he was getting looks to be, OC for other teams this year. And he also got a head coaching interview too, I believe, in this
with Carolina and probably one other team that I'm not familiar with.
Yeah. So I mean, I think it's really big to get a big name like that, and that only happened because Shane Waldron knew him. So I think Shane Waldron's vast connections in this league definitely did play a big role into building a big staff. It seemed like Luke Getsy didn't really know as many people in the league because he didn't really have that much experience in the NFL coaching.
Right. It's a big problem. Absolutely, that was a big problem. So the connection between Brown and Waldron was that they were together, I believe, with the Los Angeles Rams the year they won the Super Bowl in the 2021 season. They were together. And Thomas Brown went to Carolina as he was hired by Frank Reich back in, I believe this was this past year, because only Frank Reich lasted only one season. And then he was an OC when Frank Reich gave up play calling just before he was fired, of course. And, it's unfortunate that Brown's name was kind of somewhat tainted. And I know a lot of the Bears fans were kind of scared and was, sweating that a guy who was on the Carolina coaching staff would become like the numero uno candidate for the Chicago Bears job. And it's unfortunate because of all the dysfunction that was happening with the Carolina, organization, with their, shitty owner throwing drinks at a, fan in Jacksonville and all that kind of nonsense that was happening that really tarnished the reputation and the image of the, the coaches and the players that was on that team, by the way. But Brown was was like a real surprising hire. I believe he was hired to be the passing game coordinator as a title under Shane Waldron, who is the OC, of course. And then the Bears also added Kerry Joseph as the QB coach. Now, this was a little bit interesting hire, Risihab, because of Joseph's background. I believe he was a safety when he was in the NFL or in college, but he transitioned into becoming a quarterback. And he had a very good career up in CFL. And then, he became a quarterback's coach now with the Chicago Bears full time, and obviously it's an interesting hire, if not a controversial one, Rashad. But I don't know what your thought on the Kerry Joseph hire to be the QB coach of the Chicago Bears, whether it's to coach either Justin Fields or Caleb Williams.
Yeah, I like it for the most part. I think, he doesn't have too much experience coaching, so maybe that's one of the major drawbacks of hiring him. But I think it is pretty cool to have a guy that has experience on both defense and on offense, because you can see the game in a way that, maybe others can't, right? Because you already played defense. You already know how defenses are attacking the quarterback, what they're looking for in their coverages. So I think that knowledge of defensive coverages could be very beneficial to whoever the quarterback is next year, Justin Fields, Caleb Williams. They could benefit from having a guy like that. But like you mentioned, it is also a little bit controversial, I'd say, because he doesn't have the most experience, but he did work with Shane Waldron, I believe, in Seattle already. So they already have that connection going with each other. And he worked with, Geno Smith, Drew Lock, helped them have pretty decent careers, or, seasons in their career recently. So I think it makes sense. Like, with these hires, you can't really say too much until the games actually start. Like, all the hires can look good or bad on paper, but it doesn't really matter, until we see the production on the field, right? So, overall, I do like the hire, though. I think it's an out of the box hire, but I think it could definitely work out.
Yeah, I'm sure that Joseph was a somewhat of a assistant, excuse me, in Seattle under Waldron. So that was something that really, utilizing the connection that Waldron had with the people in his previous stops, or at least his previous stop in Seattle, was a huge one. He also ended up hiring Chad Morton, a former NFL running back, who was a running backs coach, and also a former run game coordinator up in Seattle as the running game, as a running backs coach, which was somewhat expected. And then they also hired former Chargers wide receiver coach Chris Beatty, who coached DJ Moore when they were together at University of Maryland. So there was a decent connection there. With the Chargers, he's had a good working relationship with Keenan Allen and Mike Williams, of course. And, obviously Chargers fired Brandon Staley late in the season, and they've hired, Jim Harbaugh, and they're obviously going in a new direction. So he became available as well. So it looks as though, the overarching theme here is that the Bears have learned their lessons in hiring or putting together a more competent staff this time around. It was brought up sometime this week on the Chicago radio show that even with when Matt Nagy was hired, this was brought up, I think, when Adam Johns was on ESPN 1000 a couple of days ago. When Matt Nagy was hired, if you remember, there was nobody from the Kansas City Chiefs staff that came together with Matt Nagy, which was kind of really unusual, because if you look at the Bears' current offensive staff right now, they all have, at least with Waldron, Chad Morton, Kerry Joseph, they've all worked together in Seattle. And then in the last hire with Luke Getsy, they've only interviewed 2 offensive coordinators, and then made a hiring within the span of less than 60 hours. So it's like 2.5 days, and we all know what the hell happened. The last 2 years, and Luke Getsy was fired, and rightfully so. So it looks as though, Risihab, I do believe that the Bears really vetted the candidates, and I can't stress this enough, because of all the problems that the Bears went through this past year, with the coaches, resigning and getting fired for human resources violations, and that it seems as though really Ryan Poles took charge and really got involved, and I'm sure he did get himself involved in the previous, OC hiring as well. But it looks as though at least this time, really, Ryan Poles took charge and did the the hiring process more so than Matt Eberflus, in my opinion. What do you think?
Yeah, I think, I mean, it's probably a mix of both, right? Like, Eberflus probably had to be okay with these guys coming on in some capacity because he's going to be working directly with them. And, these guys had to be agreed to be coached by, Eberflus as well. So, I think Eberflus maybe had a slight hand in the decision, but I think Poles also did have like a major hand in it, just like you mentioned, because, it just seems like, the process this time around was much more, a much better process.
Much more thorough, yes.
More thorough, right? So, yeah, I think Poles really leveraged like his connections in the league, and he probably looked on the outside, asked around people that he knew, and came to the conclusion that these were some of the best candidates. And I think that's also why Eberflus stayed here. The fact that he was okay with bringing these guys on, because if Eberflus insisted to keep Luke Getsy or go in a different direction with another coach that's not very experienced, I think that Poles maybe would have fired him right there. I think that this is the only plan that really would have worked to keep Eberflus here in Chicago. And, at this point, like I'm thinking, keeping Eberflus might even end up working out, right? Like if Shane Waldron has a good offense here in Chicago, if Eberflus can keep the defense being top 10, top 5, maybe, like this could actually end up working out. So I'm pretty happy with how the Bears have gone about, making their assistant hires. And it's looking like a very good staff in Chicago for the first time in, a very long time, I'd say.
Yeah, I agree. An overarching theme here is that Waldron and Thomas Brown, as we mentioned, they were together with the Rams under Sean McVay, and the offense that they're trying to run, obviously, with the hiring of Waldron and Thomas Brown, is to maintain the the continuity on paper with Sean McVay, wide zone scheme. That is very popular around the league nowadays. And, let's hope that this hiring is going to generate results. And God knows, Matt Eberflus, made the decision to fire Luke Getsy, not just, to make him a scapegoat. And then hoping that, firing Getsy alone is going to get the job done. This is at least on paper right now, looks to be a very good hiring, despite the Matt Eberflus's status as a head coach, and that maybe next year he and several other head coaches certainly going to be on the hot seat in 2024. But at least that certainly did not deter people like Shane Waldron, who was considered to be a head coaching candidate. Among others, but he ended up taking the Bears OC job before the run for head coaches became started to fill up, and the OC candidates were starting to dry up. So Bears really struck quickly compared to the other teams and got the guy they wanted. So I think credit where credit is due. I give a lot of credit to Ryan Poles and Matt Eberflus to get the guy that they really, really wanted. And on paper, this is considered to be a widely, lauded by leagues around the league, I should say, that this is a very, very good hiring, and that the Bears got a very good OC in Shane Waldron and the offensive staff that has strong connections, at least have a lot of experience coaching in the National Football League as well. One other hiring they made, I think this was probably Friday or Saturday, they added, I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly, Jason Hoftaling as an assistant offensive line coach, because they already have a Chris Morgan who was retained as an offensive line coach. Hoftaling is an offensive line coach with the Tennessee Titans this past year. Of course, Tennessee fired Mike Vrabel, so he became available. Certainly, Hoftaling has connections with coaching Nate Davis, who didn't really have a good season this year after signing with the Chicago Bears, coming from Tennessee Titans. Certainly, adding another experienced, coach. And somebody that the Bears players know in the past, like Davis, who really need to have a real strong bounce back here in 2024, could probably tap into his knowledge and experience. Would be something that Bears should do whatever it can to help Nate Davis get back on his his previous form as well, because it wasn't really easy watching Davis this past year, so to speak. The other hiring that the Bears made, this was a pretty big one, of course, was the defensive coordinator. They tap into somebody that they've known in the past, or at least have experience coaching with the Chicago Bears. They hired Eric Washington, who was a D-line coach with the Buffalo Bills this past year, or at least the last few years, and he has coached a defensive line exclusively everywhere with the Bears and also Carolina. Risihab, what do you think of Eric Washington hiring as the DC?
It's a very good hire compared to the Alan Williams hire. I think this makes a ton more sense. Eberflus is going with somebody that I don't think he has direct connection with. I don't believe he's worked with him directly. I could be wrong about that, but
no.
Yeah, I mean, he sought out an outside voice, from a respected organization. The Buffalo Bills, where he was the assistant head coach too, so he already has experience, kind of working with the entire team, not just only the defense. Obviously, here in Chicago, he's going to be working mostly with the defense, but I like his experience working in this league. He's worked in this 4-3 scheme basically his entire life. He was a Bears coach back in the 2010 when that was the last time we went to the playoffs as a team with the Chicago Bears, right? So he has a lot of experience working with defensive linemen too, which I really like, because I think the Bears defense now does have to take more steps forward on the defensive line. Early last year, or late last year, I should say, the Bears defense did look a lot better on the defensive line, but we still need guys to develop, like Gervon Dexter. Whoever we draft, at edge rusher could need some development as well. So, I think it makes sense to bring in like a respected, strong mind that has, experience working with the D line, knows defense pretty well, has experience working in the scheme. And I like it a lot better than the Alan Williams hire for sure. I think it's going to work out pretty well.
Right. Ron Rivera, the former Washington Commanders head coach, I believe was on ESPN Chicago, excuse me, this past week, I believe, maybe the day after the NFC Championship game, and spoke very highly of Eric Washington. Washington, as I mentioned earlier, was a D-line coach with the Chicago Bears back in 2010. The last time the Bears, had any inkling of a successful season. If you remember that year, they went to the NFC Championship. Obviously, Lovie Smith, he was, under Lovie Smith coaching tree, so he is very familiar with the Tampa 2 system that Matt Eberflus runs. But I think a lot of people allow this hiring because you want to get the most out of the defensive line with the Chicago Bears. The line of obviously took off when they acquired Montez Sweat, but before Sweat, they got absolutely nothing out of it. And Gervon Dexter played really well down the stretch, and Yannick Ngakoue unfortunately didn't do much before he suffered an injury late in the season against the Detroit Lions in December. Zach Pickens, who they also drafted in the 3rd round in the last year's draft, really didn't play as well as his teammate Gervon Dexter did. So certainly there's a room for improvement with Zach Pickens, and maybe there's a thinking by the Matt Eberflus is that the D-line coach Travis Smith didn't get the most out of the that unit. Obviously, I thought maybe that he was going to get fired, and perhaps they might bring in a new D-line coach to get the most out of it. And while that Eric Washington's title is DC, Still, it looks as though Matt Eberflus will be calling the defense this upcoming year, but obviously the DC title is a title itself. But I do expect that Washington is going to use his years of experience and knowledge to develop players like Zach Pickens, entering the critical second year. You will also want to see the continual growth from Javon Dexter. You want him to, maybe see both Pickens and Dexter to develop into a decent, defensive tackle. Certainly, what we witnessed this past year, at least from Dexter's perspective, is encouraging. But you want to see more out of Zach Pickens, and maybe Washington's hiring could be that they're not exactly happy with the D-line coach, Travis Smith. I wouldn't be shocked that maybe Smith might get either demoted or at least may, be somewhat of an afterthought on that staff as Eric Washington gets more heavily involved on that side of the ball, in this upcoming year. So, and certainly that the Bears more than likely either sign another edge rusher in the free agency to lessen the load of Montez Sweat, and maybe add another, edge rusher to bolster their depth, because they don't have anybody behind both Sweat and whoever it is that they're going to add, so that they can have multiple edge rushers that they can use in the blitz package, or at least be more creative next year. So I really like this hiring. The defensive side really showed some growth. So at least from a continuity perspective, I think it made sense to keep pretty much the majority of their coaching staff. So I'm very curious to see what Eric Washington can do with that defensive line. And then hopefully, the linebackers and the secondary, I think from our perspective, is very much set, and that they don't need much tinkering. Maybe they just need to add a few depth pieces here and there. But the D-line really needs to step up next year, in order to, generate more pass rush, which would, force, the opposing quarterbacks to, make some errant throws, which would be a bonus for, our linebackers and our secondary in 2024. All right, Risihab, let's get to the main conversation this offseason. It's pretty much, the discord about, the Justin Fields versus Caleb Williams. And, we both, the fan base certainly have their say about, whether they want to see Justin Fields stay now that we have a very competent offensive coaching staff for next year, or, we're all ready to run Justin Fields out of town and see Caleb Williams as a Chicago Bear. And, the reports came out this past week that, Colin Cowherd on his show on FS1 said that he's hearing that, Williams and his handlers, in this case, is pretty much his father, are not interested, at least in his words, not interested in playing for the Chicago Bears. This was, I believe, on Thursday. Mm-hmm. And then on Friday, the next day, he went on the Chicago radio tour. He was on ESPN Chicago and 670 The Score. And I think shortly before he went on air, he got a note from Williams' father, I believe, saying that, whoa. We didn't say we don't want to play in Chicago. He backtracked what he said, and I'm not going to play the clip because I don't want to get shot down for violations. But I'm sure a lot of the people right now watching this show paid attention to what they had to say about his appearance on both radio stations. And Risihab, I know you want to see Fields succeed, and so do I. And I think a lot of people who do want to see Fields succeed shouldn't have their names smeared and all that kind of stuff. And I will really want to reiterate the your thoughts on where does the Fields versus Williams debacle has gone, and where is your how do you really feel about this debacle that has kind of really gotten out of control this past week?
Yeah, you said it the best. It's like completely out of control right now. I think both sides just do not want to listen to the other side, and the very valid points that are on each side. I feel like even if you are a Caleb Williams fan, like you can admit, Fields definitely got done dirty here in Chicago. The coaching was not the best. We started a full rebuild in year 2. And on the other side, if you are, Fields fan, I think you still have to admit it does make a lot of sense to draft a quarterback this year and start over, because Caleb Williams is a fantastic prospect. And so far it hasn't worked out here in Chicago for Justin Fields. So, I don't like the toxicity right now in the fan base, but it's not up to us, right? Like it's going to be whatever Ryan Poles decides. And as of right now, I still believe that he is going to draft a quarterback and go Caleb Williams, just because almost every report that we're getting from, people at the Senior Bowl, people just in the NFL media, all of them are saying the same thing, that the Bears are going to be drafting Caleb Williams. And I think that, you talked about the Colin Cowherd report. I just would not pay any attention to that whatsoever, because it seemed like Colin Cowherd was just speculating kind of out of his ass. Like that's why Caleb Williams can't be calling up and be like, yo, we never said we're anti-Chicago, right? So I think that's more of like like something like the TV, networks do, the TV
so I got to call
do just to get views on their show. And I'm not saying it's wrong, obviously, because they got to give views somehow, but I just don't like how he went about that whole process. And now obviously a lot of Bears fans think that Caleb Williams is completely anti-Chicago. I mean, you're seeing it online on social media. A lot of people do not want Caleb Williams right now because they think, he's a diva that doesn't want to go to Chicago, when really he's never said that out of his mouth ever. So I think it's a pretty damaging thing for Cowherd to put out there and for people to speculate on. But we'll see what happens. I mean, again, as of right now, I think Poles is going Caleb, but we still have the NFL scouting combine. There's still going to be interviews to be had in which we're going to see, what his character is actually like, what his true feelings are about the Chicago Bears and, playing in the NFL. So I guess we'll have to, wait and see right now.
Absolutely. I'm going to play a clip of, our good friend Harrison Graham posted on, first of all, this was on February 1st when Cowherd said that Williams in his camp doesn't want to be in Chicago. Take a listen.
There's some concerns here that Dad's a little too involved. Now, dads are very, very involved in high school and college quarterbacking. So that's just part of the new world we live in. But I still contend, you're going to think I'm nuts here. I do think it's possible that Washington trades up and Chicago allows Washington to trade up, because Caleb and his group do not want to go to Chicago. He's from the D.C. area. I think Dan Quinn is considered the big concern for Caleb Williams, and you have to admit this. Where you land matters. Chicago has never developed a star quarterback. There's some concerns here that...
Okay. Now, that is a valid point. But here's what he said the very next day. I'm going to play a clip from Clay Harbor, a former NFL player who has also been, who is from the Chicago area and has also tweeted many, many times regarding the Chicago Bears stuff. Here we go.
Caleb and his dad don't always agree, but he's got a very big personality as a father. So I got a call from the Caleb Williams camp, and they went, whoa, Colin, we don't want to be painted as anti-Chicago, and we don't want to be painted as anti-Bear. And they made it clear to me that they said, listen, we don't want to go to a city that doesn't care. Chicago cares. They're big, loud, they're passionate. They fire coaches all the time. They care. We don't want to go to some Sunbelt place where you tarp off the upper deck. And they did say there is a path to succeed in Chicago. It's called the Houston Texans. Defensive coach, couple of weapons, cap space, good pick. They mentioned they got a second pick. There's a bunch of good receivers out there. LSU, Washington, they could go get another weapon, and they already have one bona fide number one pick. But it does show you the reality of Caleb Williams. And I've got sympathy for the athlete. I'm a radio guy. I could have failed at my first job. It didn't matter. I got a 50, 60-year runway. Start naming all the quarterbacks whose first spot was a disaster, and they resurrected it, and it just went great. And not many of them. And Caleb Williams is great. And all he wants to do is win. And he's super competitive. About my only criticism of Caleb Williams, he gets a little pissy after he loses. He gets very moody. He doesn't like to lose. He is hyper competitive. People banged on him because he cried after a loss this year. And I'm like, he cares. I don't want Jay Cutler, the greatest Bears quarterback ever. I don't want indifference. I want passion.
All right, so obviously he backtracked what he said the next day. It's kind of weird that that Caleb Williams and his handlers kind of using Colin Cowherd as their like a mouthpiece, so to speak, and then spreading. I don't want to say spreading, but using him as to kind of get the word out there. And I did just put it on the bottom that Caleb Williams and his handlers have a potential PR nightmare on their hand. Using Colin Cowherd to, put the words out there and then having to kind of backtrack, or at least having to contact him and say, hey, whoa. We didn't say we're not anti-Chicago, so to speak. There is a problem with, how this is being played out. Number one, I don't like the way that this Discord is kind of split our fan base. Our good friend, Braggs, has been attacked on social media. About his 5-year-old daughter, Greg Braggs. I'm sorry. Being attacked on social media this past week, which I find it to be really, really stupid and just so fucking disgusting that you have to resort to attacking, somebody else, much less a 5-year-old daughter of somebody who is obviously starting to, gain a lot of followers and also his detractors. Now that he works for CHGO in Chicago, he's a guy who hustled his way to where he is now, and I had the pleasure of knowing Braggs a couple of years ago when I went to Chicago. This was the first preseason game of Justin Fields' career, and I had the pleasure of hanging out with him and his buddies out there, and I respect what he does. And I was fortunate enough to have him on his show and vice versa a while ago. And I still hope that we get to have him on at some point. But, it's just gotten really, really ridiculous for Shab. And, I think the fans who are so hell-bent on wanting to see Fields succeed versus those who really want to move on from and then draft Caleb Williams because they consider him to be generational. And I understand both sides. Don't get me wrong. I'll be fine with either one next year. Where do you stand on the Fields versus Williams next year? And where do you stand on, whoever's at quarterback? Are you happy with either one of them, first and foremost?
Yeah, I'll be happy with either, man. I mean, I've been on record saying that I still think Fields was done dirty here in Chicago. I think that with the proper coaching staff, 100%. With better weapons that we will be getting with Marvin Harrison Jr. if we do trade back, I think Fields can still have success here in Chicago. But at the same time, you got to face reality at some point. And I think that it's more likely that Caleb Williams is going to be the quarterback, which I'm going to be okay with as well. Because obviously you and me being Bears fans for a long time, I mean, you longer than I have been, as well. Like we've been used to rooting for like so many different quarterbacks, so many different coaches and all. Like we're used to this at this point. So like it should not be a surprise that, again, we messed up another quarterback and we're probably going to go to the next one. But being Bears fans, all you can really do is, root for the quarterback you have right now and hope that he works out when the previous 5, 10, 15 haven't. It's kind of that's kind of what being a fan is, just being delusional and, hoping for the best when, it hasn't happened yet. But yeah, I mean, like you mentioned, like I'd be okay with either quarterback. And I feel like more Bears fans should accept that too. Like all the back and forth we have going on, the name calling, the fighting and all. I don't understand at all. Like, it's just sports at the end of the day. Yeah, it should be like a fun time right now for Bears fans to be discussing about the bright future we could have, but instead it's resorted in a bunch of name calling, a bunch of arguing, a bunch of fighting.
Exactly.
But that's the world that social media is right now, right? Like, if you go on social media, it's full of like hate and vitriol. It's not really productive right now. So
No.
yeah, I think it's a very shameful thing what's happening in the Bears fan base right now, but it's only going to last for another month, right? Because we're going to have a decision probably by the end of like, February, early March, I think people are suggesting. So thankfully we won't have to debate this for too much longer, but it's been a very rough, last, 5-6 months for the Bears fan base.
Yeah, it's really, really gotten out of control. And, I see your comments on Bragg's here. Really sorry you have to deal with that, man. And, it's really, really gotten out of control. And, social media, unfortunately, has become like a cesspool of, hate and vitriol, like you said. I'm sure, you're no stranger. I'm no stranger.
Oh, yeah.
In either cases, though it might be a little bit different, between us. I mean, whether it's something about politics or something about the Bears. Obviously, they don't go hand in hand. But the fact that the people who get triggered by the stuff that we put out there, obviously, they go kind of hand in hand nowadays, and it's unfortunate. Certainly there have been people who have lost jobs or had their lives turned upside down, whether you're the victim or whether the instigator. Nobody wins in this case. And for Greg Braggs to have his family member attacked, it is a serious problem. I don't know who you are or whoever you are, but you're a low class scumbag going after a 5-year-old girl. And whoever you are, I hope you go to hell. I hate to say this, but attacking somebody else's child because over the discord between Fields and Williams is totally nonsense. Okay.
Yeah.
And then this isn't also about black or white racial issue either. This isn't about racism. This isn't about any of that kind of stuff either. So, it's unfortunate that the Bears organization as a whole have been a hellhole when it comes to developing quarterbacks. And on paper, it looks as though they made a similar mistake once again, retaining Matt Eberflus to pair with a rookie quarterback like Caleb Williams. And I understand that side too, because we went through the same shit with Mitch Trubisky and John Fox, Matt Nagy with Justin Fields. And somehow, even with Kevin Warren hired, it remains the same. And I understand that frustration. That frustration should be pointed toward the Bears organization and George McCaskey, who basically are just probably at this point doesn't really care much about running this organization until his mother dies, and then basically ready to sell off the asset, their only asset that is valuable right now before taxes and inheritance taxes and all that kind of stuff becomes somewhat of a burden, of course. But this discourse will only continue, unfortunately, until we have this situation settled, or completely resolved. And I do predict that by NFL draft combine, that when coaches and front office personnel all converge in Indianapolis, that's when we know what the course is going to be. Because I think dragging this whole process out by the day before or the day of the NFL draft doesn't really make sense from neither side. It's just going to be a massive PR nightmare for the Bears organization to not have a decision on the quarterback. I think if the Bears haven't made a decision by then, And as incompetent as the Bears have been, I think it would be a whole new level of incompetency if the Bears haven't made a decision by then. But I don't think that was going to be the case with Ryan Poles. And Williams has to, at some point, speak in front of a media. I know he has been kind of pampered when he was with USC. Lincoln Riley did him no favors by not letting him speak after the game in last year, especially when the team suffered a bad losses, if you remember. But I think a lot of people are pissed at Williams and the way he has handled himself on and off the field, especially with the crying and painting nails, and something that really doesn't neither one of us, you and I, are really concerned about. But certainly, at some point, he is going to have to speak in front of a media, regardless. The day he get drafted, he's going to have to face the media locally and nationally throughout the training camp, and also immediately after the game, whether they win or lose. So Williams and his handlers, at some point, they're going to have to make their intentions very, very clear. And if you compare Chicago Bears and, let's just say, for example, his hometown Washington Commanders, the Bears are in a very, very interesting position, because normally the team that drafts number one overall, you're a really, really bad team. Like, you're a team like you finished 2 or 3 wins only. But the Bears are not that the team anymore. This is not the 2022 where the Bears finished 3-14 en route to a worst season in franchise history to get the number one pick. They got lucky because Carolina was dog shit. So now I understand the process that where the Bears have to take advantage of this opportunity, and draft a quarterback that many consider to be, generational, once in a lifetime talent, that many NFL scouts and personnel people are equating Williams to Patrick Mahomes. And, we've missed out on drafting Patrick Mahomes back in 2017, and we settled for Mitch Trubisky, and we're still paying for that. And I understand, with Mahomes, the way he's played ever since he became a starter in the NFL, and having won 2 Super Bowls already and about to, play for his 3rd Super Bowl title in such a short career. I understand the Bears fans desperate for our own Patrick Mahomes, but tearing down other fans and name calling and even going, full on, racism or even attacking somebody else's child is not a good look on our fan base. And, maybe Williams is going to use that as an excuse to avoid coming to Chicago at all costs. Or maybe that, he just really, really wants to go to, his hometown, Washington, because I think a lot of athletes, they want to play at their hometown or, where they grew up at some point in their career. And perhaps maybe that playing at Washington from his very, beginning, from his rookie season, seems to be more enticing than maybe going to Chicago, whether it's the weather or the organizational failure as a whole. Williams and his handlers, they have to make that clear. They can't be wishy-washy and pretend that, they're going to be happy, going to Chicago and all of that stuff. It has to come from their own mouth. Okay, I don't think nobody should buy into Colin Cowherd or anybody else's words. And I think this was a big PR blunder that the Williams and his handlers trying to use Colin Cowherd's, as a mouthpiece to how they're thinking or how they're going to be judged or how how they're going to be perceived. I think this was a big blunder by Williams and his handlers. And again, they have to, speak from their own mouth, not using, some talk show host, and, try to get the word out and try to see, what the water is like. We're very, very passionate fans, but we're not stupid. Okay, so that's something that Caleb Williams and his handlers has to understand. What it's like to play for Chicago Bears, and Williams better be fully prepared and invested in becoming the Chicago Bears quarterback. He can become the greatest quarterback not only in the Chicago Bears history, but perhaps if he put his efforts into as much as he does off the field, I think he could definitely be able to, become a top 5 quarterback. I do believe he has that talent. I think you and I agree on that. The Bears have a very good offensive line. Bears will likely add a couple of receivers and maybe tight ends to the weapon. They have a decent running game. So, it's not like he's going to have to settle for an organization that's completely, starting from the bottom, with no offensive line or no weapons like Bryce Young had to endure this past year with Carolina. This is a much better situation for Caleb Williams. Okay. And if he still wants to go to Washington because the lure of playing for his hometown and perhaps, playing for Cliff Kingsbury, who shockingly turned down the OC job with, the Las Vegas Raiders, and is rumored to be maybe at the very top of a Washington Commanders OC job. And people are fretting that because Williams and Cliff Kingsbury worked together on with the USC, with Kingsbury as the offensive analyst, QB coach type role. I understand the temptation from Washington to perhaps go all in to go get Caleb Williams. It would be a monumental decision from new ownership in Washington because of more than 2 decades of a shit show with Dan Snyder, and they want to really change the narrative of the franchise as much as the Bears wants to change their own perception as well. So I'm so sorry for rambling very much, Risihab. If you want to finish out your thoughts on this Discord, feel free to add.
I was just going to add that I think Caleb should prefer coming to Chicago. I mean, I get the whole hometown thing. I get playing for Cliff Kingsbury, a guy that he already knows, but the Bears are much better set up than the Commanders are for the very near future. Like, we already have our offensive line in place for the most part. Besides, we just have to add a center and some more depth. We already have a dynamic number 1 receiver in DJ Moore. We're probably going to get another receiver in the NFL draft. We have Cole Kmet here. We have maybe a strong run game next year. We have a really good defense, most of all. That's the one thing he won't get in Washington. The Commanders have a terrible defense right now. It's not going to get dramatically better next year. So he's going to have to win in shootouts and, play from behind and probably throw some interceptions because he's going to be playing from behind. So playing in Chicago is a much more preferable scenario for him, I feel like. I know that our history is that we ruin quarterbacks. We put quarterbacks in bad positions to succeed, but that's not the case whatsoever right now. Like you mentioned, we only got the number 1 pick because Carolina was terrible. The Bears were almost a playoff team this year. We were a couple bounces away from maybe making the playoffs this year. So I don't think that narrative that Caleb, well, I mean, maybe he doesn't want to come here, but I don't think he should not want to come here because there's so much to look forward to here. If you are the franchise quarterback, you're going to be worshipped in a way that, few athletes in all sports would be, because Bears fans have been dying for that franchise quarterback. So I just don't see the reasons why Caleb would not want to come to Chicago. I think, it really does not make sense. I think it might be something that has kind of been made up out of thin air by media people that maybe are just looking for attention right now. So
right. And it was kind of really embarrassing that people like Danny Parkins completely freaked out about Colin Cowherd's reports. It's really weird that as much as I respect Danny Parkins' work on 670 The Score and what he has accomplished, it's like one media member completely freaking out over one media member. It's just kind of like not a good look from an industry standpoint, because I think you should be able to call out like Silby did on his interview with Colin Cowherd about which was something that he ended up backtracking, as we saw on the clip earlier. And It's kind of embarrassing, that where the industry has become or where it is going right now, Rishabh. Certainly, you and I, we have our own platform, and yours is obviously, growing leaps and bounds, and that you have your own, personal opinions that is not connected to anybody. I'm not associated with anybody, and we certainly, have our our opinions that our own opinion, and we certainly don't expect everybody out there to agree on everything at 100%. And it's kind of embarrassing that we take people's words out of a context very much so, without verifying. It's kind of embarrassing that we saw something similarly play out when Shohei Ohtani's free agency frenzy took place late last year, and people were just basically, respected baseball reporters were just basically, tripping on each other about where Ohtani's going and all that kind of stuff, and eventually, Ohtani had the basically controlled his own narrative, perhaps, and then people like John Paul Morosi having to go on his Twitter and apologize, which obviously, he took a bit of a credibility hit, but certainly, for somebody like John Paul Morosi to, own up his own mistakes, I think it speaks volume of who he is, and I think it's kind of people like Colin Cowherd, just like. Slightly backtracking after getting a pushback, and then you have somebody in Chicago media just basically eating up his own word and not pushing back. I think it's a bit of an embarrassment. So hopefully this discord will soon to end once and for all. And I do predict that by the time NFL Combine rolls around, we'll have a better idea whether Ryan Poles is going to either fleece teams like Washington for Caleb Williams, or they're going to trade number one pick, but they will also still trade Justin Fields, because I think it's in the best interest of the Bears to have a decision both for Fields and also for their future moving forward. What do you think, Rishabh?
I agree with that. I think it makes sense to do it as soon as you possibly can. Probably not in the next few weeks, but by the scouting combine, when a bunch of people are meeting together, all the NFL decision makers, all the GMs are going to be there. I think Poles is going to talk with everybody there and see what the asking price is for Justin Fields or for the number one pick. Or, he's going to tell them what the asking price is for the number one pick and, what he wants for Fields, and he's going to take into account like what teams think about those asking prices and judge, accordingly. Right. Like, and, even though a lot of people right now think that he's definitely going to trade Fields, there could be a scenario in which he gets an absolute like Godfather offer for the number one overall pick, multiple first round picks, players, second round picks, etc., which maybe he could still consider, keeping Fields. But I guess we'll see, what's going to happen. Right now, I'm really just ready for it to be over, for the decision to be over, because I'm sick about talking about it for every single day for the past, few weeks and few months. But I think it's only a few more weeks of this discussion, and then Poles should be deciding something pretty soon.
Absolutely. Unfortunately, nobody's going to be satisfied or happy with no matter what the decision is. Again, that's the problem that the Chicago Bears have on their own. It's the PR nightmare that they're enduring themselves, or at least they have put themselves in. So, I think the fans should be prepared for any scenario at this point. And for the record, I'm okay. I'm going to be totally fine, and I'm going to support the Bears 100%, no matter who the quarterback is, Williams or Fields. It doesn't change the fact that I'm a Chicago Bears fan, and I don't think it shouldn't change your perspective of the Chicago Bears. If you want to, be done with the Chicago Bears fandom, that's your choice. So be it. But don't attack anybody, for their opinions, or using their family members or race as a way to, slam somebody else's, opinion. I think we're a better fandom. And I think if we're just as passionate about Williams versus Fields, I think that anger and spirit should be directed toward the Chicago Bears organization for how they've botched the quarterbacks in their development, the entire franchise existence. And I will end on this Fields versus Williams. I think Williams again has to speak on his own words. Until Williams speaks, there's always a possibility that he's going to pull an Elway or Eli Manning. Okay, silence is deafening, and that Williams has to speak on his own words. He can't continue to ignore media. Maybe he might not show up at the combine because, he knows that he's going to go number 1 overall, and that maybe he and his handlers think that they control the draft, but rather than the Bears control the draft. So I hope that Williams, for his own sake, speak out on this matter once and for all and make it clear. He wants to come to Chicago Bears, or he does not want to come to the Chicago Bears. It's quite simple. And until he speaks out or he makes his intentions clear, I think we should just basically chill out and let the situation play out. And I hope that fans out there will maintain civility and keep their own perspective without going all out on attacking other fan base. So, all right, let's end our on a more positive note. And we have the Super Bowl next week, and at least this week it's kind of like a calm before the storm. Starting tomorrow, it's going to be a media frenzy, and by next week at this time, we're probably going to be all busy, grocery shopping, ordering food, et cetera, et cetera. So, it's the 49ers and the Chiefs. It's a rematch from what we witnessed 4 years ago, Risihab. And, I live out in the Kansas City area. So the way the Chiefs really finished this past year, there was a legitimate concern about the Chiefs and the direction they were heading. But, having played the 2 road games for the first time in Patrick Mahomes' career, I was really impressed with the way the Chiefs came out and, won back-to-back games at Buffalo and Baltimore last week. Those are not exactly easy place to play, from a weather perspective and having to deal with the elements and the fans on the road. And on the other hand, the 49ers, once again, just like we witnessed in the Packers game, really, really started slowly. Brock Purdy was not impressive at all. They just run roughshod against the 49ers in the first half, and then a couple of Dan Campbell's signature 4th down gambles completely backfired on him, and the 49ers took advantage and won the NFC Championship. What is your early look on this Super Bowl 58 as we stand a week before the actual gameplay next Sunday?
Yeah, like you mentioned, credit to the Chiefs for even being here right now. I did not think there would be any chance they would be in the Super Bowl this year with, their receiving core and how bad it was early this year. And It just seemed like their offense was not on the same page with each other for the first few months of the season, really. They weren't a good team really until the playoffs rolled around. But Patrick Mahomes always finds a way to elevate his team and play a lot better in the playoffs, which is maybe another reason why, Bears fans are hoping for Caleb Williams. If they see something in Caleb that's like Mahomes, that's why they want him, right? So, yeah, I think Mahomes is the main reason why this team is so freaking good right now. And I expect that to continue in the Super Bowl. I'm fully expecting the Chiefs to win this one, just because if you look at Mahomes versus Brock Purdy, I don't even think it's a comparable situation at all. Mahomes is 1,000 times better than Purdy is, in my opinion. Obviously, Purdy does have the better team around him. So that could be a reason why the game is closer, maybe a reason why the Niners could pull off the upset. Are the Niners favored in this game?
Yeah, they're actually favored in this one, probably by 2.5 or 3 points right now.
I disagree with that. I feel like the Chiefs should definitely be favored just because of their prior experience and because of having Mahomes. But yeah, I mean, the odds makers clearly know that the Niners have the better team overall, which again is the reason why the Niners could maybe win this. But I think at the end of the day, it'll come down to who the better quarterback is. late in the fourth quarter if it is a close game. And Mahomes has already proven time and time again that he is the best quarterback in the NFL right now. So as for like a score prediction, if you want that, I'd probably go Chiefs win 27-24. I think it should be a pretty close game, but I do think Mahomes wins and gets his third ring, unfortunately. Yeah. Which, I mean, it sucks to see the same thing over and over again. Most likely outcome right now.
Yeah. The Chiefs are certainly a defending champions, and until they're knocked out, I'm going to favor them, of course. Mahomes versus Purdy narrative, obviously there's really no comparison. We know that Mahomes is, a much, much better quarterback not just from a talent perspective as well. But, the Chiefs have to be very, very careful because the 49ers do have a very formidable defense. And you might remember the Chiefs Tampa Bay Bucks game a couple of years ago. The Bucks defense really run a rough shot against the Mahomes and the Chiefs and upset the Chiefs. Joey, Nick Bosa is a hell of a pass rusher. Fred Warner, they have a very good defense on their hand. On the other hand, the Chiefs offensive line, Juwan Taylor, their big free agent signing out of from Jacksonville, has not been very, very good. He's committed a lot of penalties, both holding and also a false start. So that's something you might have to keep an eye on. You want to make sure that Patrick Mahomes stay upright. For the 49ers, they're going to run. They better really lean on Christian McCaffrey early and often. I think sometimes they kind of tend to deviate away from McCaffrey when they should be leaning on him more and more, rather than letting Brock Purdy do his thing. So I'm very curious to see if Kyle Shanahan can finally get over that hump. People know him with the Falcons, when they blew a 28-3 lead. He was the OC under Dan Quinn on that Falcons team. 2019, he took the 49ers to Super Bowl after 2 bad years back to back. And, they lost to the Chiefs when they had the lead in the fourth quarter. So that's something that he still probably remembers to this day. And, again, you lose to the Chiefs in a similar manner. And maybe Shanahan's tenure might be going into next year might be a little bit shakier than people give credit to. So this is a game that has a lot of riding on the 49ers side right now. And they have to make sure that Brock Purdy isn't getting into a shootout with, guys like Mahomes, who can definitely easily throw 45 times in the game. And, certainly can go toe-to-toe with any quarterback at this point. So I'm very curious to see what kind of game plan Shanahan has for Brock Purdy and that offense. Right now, I'm leaning towards the Kansas City Chiefs in a bit of a shootout. I think maybe 31-27, something in like that range. Chiefs defense has been stellar. I think the defense has really, really carried because, as you said earlier, their offense has been god-awful because receivers keep dropping passes and, just hasn't been consistent. So I do expect Steve Spagnuolo's defense to try and, give, Brock Purdy some hellacious time behind the pocket. So I do expect the, Chiefs to, have their way and maybe win again, 31-27 as of right now. So, well, Risihab, listen, thanks for your time as always today. Yeah, we covered a lot of ground, and we had a real spirited debate, especially on the Fields versus Williams Discord that splintered our fan base, and hopefully we'll have an answer to this decision once and for all pretty soon, and it would be also in the best interest of our fan base to kind of be prepared for either scenario and just basically move on with it as well. So you can find Risihab on his YouTube channel, The Windy City Productions. as well. So I can be found on Twitter at AsianSportsFan1, and I also write for the BearGogglesOn.com, as you can see on the bottom screen as well. Risihab, thanks for your time. Let's do this again, hopefully sometime next week, if necessary, or maybe shortly after the Super Bowl, and our take on the Super Bowl game, commercials, and the any interesting Bears nuggets as we speak. Enjoy your Sunday, and once again, Risihab, happy birthday to you, and hopefully you had a very good week and weekend as well. We'll see you next time, folks. Thank you so much.
See you next time.